Steve, you've helped us understand credit scores a lot better. Can you help us with the history of the credit scores and get into the history of the credit bureaus?
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery about credit scores and credit bureaus. They're two separate institutions, actually. Credit bureaus started about 100 years ago, and credit scores were created in about 1954, to be exact. A guy named William Farrar and Earl Isaac take credit for creating what we refer to as our FICO score. Through lots of research and lots of data, they created what they call a regressional analysis system that's supposed to predict what we'll do in the future. And credit scores were created for bankers, not for us. They're created for us not to even look at. In fact, when they first became accessible to us back in the early 2000s, it was told that we wouldn't understand them and that it would be confusing to us. However, they were governing every decision we ever had to make with credit. And investors were at a disadvantage because they were always told that they either had good scores or low scores, but really couldn't see those scores.
Right. So, can you tell us a little bit of why they created the credit bureaus?
The credit bureaus were created to just monitor people's spending habits for merchants. Merchants were very worried, as they are now, about who was getting credit, who was paying people back, and things like that. They wanted to automate the system and kind of streamline it back in 1954, as early as 1954, thinking that they could predict what people would do. And so they were adopted back in the mainstream of mortgages back in 1994 with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that accepted credit scores as being a predictable number that they could take a risk on. And it did streamline things. I'm sure you, in the industry you understand we refer to it as what, credit score driven?
Everything is credit score driven in the mortgage business.
And before that, it was just, what we refer to as judgmental analysis, where they sat around and looked at a credit report and determined what the likelihood of that person would be to pay back that loan.
Wonderful. Thank you for that information.
And one other thing you might want to know is credit scores predict how likely you are to be 90 days late over the next 24 months. That's really what they're looking at, how likely that person will pay back a loan on time over the next 24 months.
And they are pretty accurate, correct?
They are. There's a lot of gray areas there. Credit scores don't always define a person's ability to pay back a loan. We're going to talk today about all the different histories of why they vary, and people's credit histories are random sometimes as far as trying to predict what their score is going to be. There's three kinds of credit bureaus, as we can see here. I don't say three kinds, there's three companies that keep scores and keep credit reports on us. And they refer to as TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. The one that we have here, Dun & Bradstreet, is very old. That applies strictly to businesses. But nevertheless, these companies have changed names over the years. But currently, this is what we refer to as TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax.
And they all have a nickname as well.
Yeah. We have Experian used to be TRW. Equifax used to be called CBI. TransUnion has been around for a long time. Right. And they all three have separate credit scores. So when people say they have a FICO score, that applies strictly to Experian.
Correct.
They say they have a Beacon score, that applies to Equifax. If they say they have an Empirica score, that applies to TransUnion. So.